Okay, Ryan, we're now past the 2026 trade deadline in the NHL, and two things are still for certain. The Leafs are terrible, and Colorado is still the undeniable favorite to win the Stanley Cup.
Can't argue with that. Can't argue with that.
Nope.
Can't argue with that. The trade deadline was about what I expected. So a couple of bigger names changed addresses.
It was so late.
There was one shocker trade. Nobody saw the John Carlson trade coming, but everything else was just sort of like a bunch of depth pieces.
Right. It was the shock of the trade deadline was how late everything happened, and how many big players like Krocek and some of the other big names on the board didn't go.
Yeah.
And
well, did anybody really think that Robert Thomas was actually going to get traded at the deadline?
I think there was serious talk. I just think that St. Louis was really, I don't blame him. He's got term left on his contract. He's a great player. They were looking for a haul, and they were looking for somebody desperate to take him and give them a big return. And
yeah, that kind of haul comes in the summertime. It doesn't come at the trade deadline.
You might see that in the summer, right? I think there's a few things. Same thing for Toronto with OEL. They were rightfully not going to give a player of his stature up for a second round pick. They were looking for a first rounder and
they were able to give Scott Laughton out for a third round pick.
Geez, we'll get into that in a second. But I think that's, and the other thing that, and I watched the TSN trade deadline from start to finish. I was the fool watching for 8 hours. But they did a great job, a lot of fun, made Sportsnet look like fools. But, I think what some of the other talk was, the big difference this year is that salary cap for the playoffs is in play. And a lot of teams are trying to figure out how that's going to affect their lineup, how that's going to affect what they could do at the trade deadline, because, the last couple of years, as long as we can probably remember, is that the playoff teams were all over the salary cap come playoff, and especially the Stanley Cup winner was normally $3 to $4 million over the salary cap. So
yeah, it feels
this year
to me
probably
that
changed the tone of how players do it, and then you didn't see a lot of players with term move hands because of that, probably.
Yeah, I think just a different way of putting what you're just saying is it kind of limits the big swings to teams that have people on the LTIR, the long-term injury reserve, who are not coming back for the playoffs.
Right.
And that's not a deep list. And so, you had Dallas because they're, going to miss Tyler Seguin.
Right.
And, Florida was a seller, not a buyer. But, it definitely sort of the big names people were expecting were not.
Yeah, Krocek being
not
the
moving.
biggest, right? Krocek and Thomas were the two biggies that a lot of people talked about. A lot of people thought, you can understand Robert Thomas, but there's been so much talk about Krocek and the Rangers selling everybody.
Trocheck,
Trocheck.
But Vincent Trocheck is a 20-goal third line center at this point in his career.
But he's a gritty,
on a good team,
tough guy in the playoffs. He's a good playoff player. He could be, but whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Braden Shane moved teams. He's the same type of guy. Just
he's
maybe a few
older.
years old.
Yeah, a little older, a little more gray beard on him.
Who are you calling a gray beard? What's wrong with having gray in your beard?
But look, we didn't talk about it today. You didn't wear the baseball cap, and now everybody's going to get to see your lovely coif. Look at the flowing locks that I'm not showing again. I brought something else to the table today. You can see our backdrop, and we got the new logo. We got a little bit of a rink pro motif, so you don't just have the black background.
I'm impressed.
I'm impressed. Over the next, we're getting this real.
You're an artiste.
I'm trying. Thanks to AI. But no, we're trying to step up our game a little bit here. So.
Okay, so how do you want to structure our trade deadline coverage? Do you want to talk about the Leafs and Habs first, and then talk about the big moves around the league?
I think we talk about our Leafs and our Habs, and then we'll go around the league and talk about the winners and losers.
The Habs will be quick. They didn't do anything.
Well, we're going to have an argument about the Habs when we get there. Let's start with the Leafs, because I think we both agree that it was a complete terrible day for the Leafs. Trey Leaving game came out afterwards saying we were trying to add a lot of some refill the cupboards, really, and bring in some young talent. But it was a buyer's market. Sellers like Toronto had trouble trying to offload their UFAs. And, bad deals were done. I can't say bad deals because the market would bear what the market would bear. But the bad deals were done last year, picking up Laughton for a first rounder and Grabenkin, and picking up Carlo last year for a first rounder, Minton, and a first round pick, which is top five protected. Um, and then in the return for Lawton, who you gave up a first rounder for, you get a third and maybe a second if the Kings make the playoffs. McMahon returns you a second and a third. Um, and the surprise of all of them, you get, a conditional first round pick, top 10 protected, and a couple other picks. But you have to say this is a complete failure by Trey Levin to really significantly make a mark on the team.
Yep. By the way, that last bit is such a minor bit, but it tells you everything about Trey Levin, which is the Colorado Avalanche, who are not going to have a top 10 draft pick for the next decade, most likely. They managed to top 10 protect their pick in that deal.
And for Carlo,
Treliving couldn't get that with Carlo.
And we gave up a prospect in Fraser Minton.
Yeah.
Just terrible. And look at last year, the Leafs were going for broke and people were holding them to the fire. I get it. But to your point, now we have to reset, right? The Leafs, we're not going to be a competitive team for the next couple of years. We're 2, 3, 4 maybe years out from really being in a competitive spot. The question mark is,
which is
Trey
beyond
Levin the guy? Is this the guy you want to do the rebuild? And
no.
Right, and that's the problem. See,
and Berube's not the coach either.
Right, and the only thing that good maybe to come out of this trade deadline and the fact that we didn't do a lot, because now you have to make a decision on Riley over the summer. He's going to be hopefully a move at the draft or over the summer. OEL, the same thing. You don't want to get rid of OEL because he's got a little term and he's in, but he's going to return you something, and you're not going to be competitive while he's around, so you might as well turn him into something.
But I got another question.
Hold on, but do you want Trey Levin being that guy? And it's the only thing that maybe is good that we didn't do anything is that maybe now they can clean house, get rid of Trey Levin, and have someone start over.
Yeah, but there's a more important question in there, because I think the answer is given for Trey Levin and Berube. The bigger question is, if you accept the premise that the Toronto Maple Leafs are not going to be contenders for at least 2 to 4 years, that takes you out of Auston Matthews' current contract.
Well, that's the problem, right? You got 2 years left on him. You're going to have to start talking to him and try and extend him before the end of this contract if you believe that he's going to be your star player in 3-4 years, right? If he's still he's in his prime now. In 3-4 years, is he going to be the player you need him to be to take you to the Stanley Cup with a new set of players around him? Younger set. Is he going to be a complementary piece? Is he still going to be the leader? We don't know that. We're seeing a fall off right now in his game because, let's be honest, the team sucks. So it's not helpful that players around him, they've not given him elite talent to play with. As much as I've lambasted him to the wall, he's not surrounded with a great team. So, but you're right. They need to make a decision on him. And in the next 2 years, do you sell him? Right. But if you do that,
and then it's a
full rebuild, and you're 5 to 6 and 7 years away from being competitive, right?
Right.
It's so like if you want to do the turnaround that we talked about, that Bruins have seemingly done a little bit of retool, you need him and you need to extend him, right?
Yeah, and you also need to make moves in the meantime,
right,
that keep them competitive,
right?
And that's the trick to doing the trick to doing that and not ensconcing yourself in the mushy middle for a decade. That is the hardest thing.
Well, you have to thread that needle, right? And we talked about before we got on air. We are dangerously close. When I say we, the Toronto Maple Leafs are dangerously close to going back to the 1980s and being that team that was completely unwatchable and terrible and bottom feeders. And it's actually a reason why we are where we are now. Bad teams, draft picks, so forth and so on, and build over time. But do we want to go back to the 1980s? I don't. That was horrible watching television, Leaf TV. It was terrible. And I don't think they want to go there. So you're right. They need to thread the needle, and they need to pick up some great talent. You can't do it all in free agency because then you get a really expensive team really quickly, which is a problem, right? And we're seeing that. We'll talk about the Knights in a little while. The Knights are a really expensive team, and they're not having a great season and they got nobody in net and they couldn't afford to go get somebody. But you don't want to be that team that's too expensive really quickly. So you need to do it a little bit of, you need to have patience, 2-3 years of some good draft picks, some young kids coming up and hopefully doing some good things. And then in free agency, pick up some players and extend some of your talent, your big name talent, to be able to go and trade some guys like Riley and maybe OEL that can bring in somebody a little bit younger that has talent, maybe equal talent to them, right? But has longer road.
Yeah.
But I don't
I'm
think
just,
Trey
I'm not,
Levin's the
look,
guy to do that. And
I'm
Berube
not
is not a
a,
development coach. We said that last week.
I'm not a general manager, but it's very difficult for me to see the path
Yeah.
for the Maple Leafs, given the assets they have, right? They've got a barren farm system. They've got exactly two prospects who are sure, nobody's ever surefire, but like probable NHL talent. They've got no first round draft picks in the next 2 years. It feels to me that you're not acquiring draft picks to draft people at this point. You're acquiring draft picks to use as assets to try to trade for talent that can help you
Potentially,
now.
but you do need to restock the minors. You need to you need to use some of those draft picks to actually draft some young talent, because again, you can't do this all in free agency and you can't do it all through trades. You got to develop
Right.
some talent. So it has to be a mixture of all, and you're right. The needles got to be thread really tightly. It's going to be really difficult to do. Can they do it? You look at this team right now; they're terrible to watch. And
Yeah.
you said that we might not have a first round pick next year. We actually might have a pick this year because we're only 8 points up on the fifth place team, the fifth worst place team right now, and
It's
our pick
hard to
for
be
26 is top 5 protected, and we're not far from either
right,
falling there
but they're
or
what?
getting
They're
a lottery pick that goes there.
they got what, 22 games left, 21 games left?
18, and it's
18
going to be a
games left.
painful 18 games to watch.
Fine, but do you know how hard it is to be 8 points worse than the fifth worst team in the league to get to that level?
We're 0-7 since
You're going to need to be
break
0-18
and minus 39 goals against. We aren't far. And again, you don't, even if we fall to the top 5, we're not guaranteed a top 5 pick if we fall out of the top 5. You need to be in that top 8 to have a reasonable chance of dropping into it.
No. You have to be in the top 6 to have a reasonable chance, because the odds of dropping in the top 5 from the 7th or 8th position are really low.
Oh yeah, I get that, but
really low. And by the way,
to your point, it's
really want to
unlikely
give
we're going to drop to the top
seventh,
5. So you got to get as close to it as you can.
Yeah,
and the way they're playing, it looks like they're going for it.
Yeah, the way they're playing, they're going to end up getting there. They'll get the fifth slot, and then they'll lose it, and then in the lottery, and then the Bruins will get a 6th draft pick.
Right.
Great.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Both of us will be pissed off.
yeah, no question. Oh, it's just bad. So let's get off the Leafs.
Yeah. Okay, so now you can yell at me about the Canadians, because I'm
so let's move
thrilled
to
that
the
they did
Canadiens for a
not.
second. Are you? I know last week we talked about it, and you said I'm okay if they stand pat. Given what happened in the East with Carolina doing very little, Tampa Bay bringing in the Stanley Cup jinx and Corey Perry, that's all they did, and nobody else in the East really making a significant move other than maybe Buffalo bringing in Logan Stanley and Shen and making some moves to improve their team.
Especially their blue line, yeah.
The East is wide open. Why wouldn't the Habs do something to really push them over give themselves the optimum opportunity to take a run at the East? Whether you win it or not is questionable, but of any year, the East is so wide open. This is the year. Why wouldn't you go out and get somebody? Because your goaltending this last few weeks has been terrible, and your defensive woes are just magnifying it.
Okay, fine. So let me look at it this way. Hughes and Gorton were not going to go out and get a rental. They're building something for the future. If they were going to make a deal, they were going to make a deal for somebody with term.
But the future might be now.
The future is not now. The future is not now. The window.
That's the debate we're having.
It is
even
not.
Even everybody on the panel was like, Button, Carly Yakova was going up one side.
First of all, look, Craig Button, God love him and his shirts, but the man's been blowing smoke up the Canadians' butts for most of the season. Yes, they are a good team. They are a playoff team. But here's where they are, okay? This is a team as constructed that can win a round, maybe 2 as constructed. if they make a rental acquisition for, a first round draft pick or other assets, they'll get a rental. And if you're looking on the back end, because they were really looking for a right-hand defenseman, uh, you're going to have to get somebody who is significantly better than either Arbor Jacki or Jaden
You
Struble.
probably could have got OEL for fairly cheap price.
They don't need OEL. They need somebody who can go in and thump you in front of the net.
OEL is a tough. I'm actually being really surprised how good he's being physically.
Please, I don't know. Don't sell me. The trade deadline is passed.
I know, but you also could have gone a goaltender.
Fine.
Bobrovsky wouldn't have cost a lot. He could have been a rental. It wouldn't have cost you a lot.
Yes, he would have cost a fortune. They would have wanted a first-round draft pick for them because Florida has no first-round draft picks. They would have insisted on that.
Maybe, but having Bobrovsky on your lineup,
no.
Winning.
By the way, Bobrovsky's got an 880 something save percentage in front of a much better D than the Canadians have at this point. So I don't feel necessarily like he was going to come and be a savior. Now, Hughes was apparently looking at a longer term deal, like this, getting somebody with term, and it was supposed to be a blockbuster kind of thing, and it didn't work out. And he's not talking about who it was because
what position do you think it was, a defenseman or a goaltender?
No idea. It might have been a second line center. It could have been Robert Thomas.
It could have been Robert Thomas.
But whoever it was, he's not talking because the deal might get revived in the summertime.
Right.
So in the end, given the fact that if you were looking for a defenseman, because they were very clear they weren't looking for a goalie, right? So if they were looking for a defenseman, the price you would have to pay to get somebody that was markedly better than either Jacki or Struble was going to be very high. And at best, that gets you maybe another round further. Maybe it gets you to the conference finals. But the Canadians aren't beating any of Colorado, Minnesota, or Dallas.
I get that, but they had a shot, and I'm
keep your powder dry.
Fan, I want my team when they're shot and the window's open. Because the window's open in the East.
And this is
right now.
This is why the Maple Leafs are where they are. Because
this team could beat Tampa Bay, Buffalo, or Carolina, right? They could beat them, and if they had given themselves a player, whether a defenseman or a goaltender, to fix some of the woes, they could be in a better position to do that. Do I think they're going to do it now? No, because the class of the East up until the trade deadline was Tampa Bay, and tonight it just changed to Buffalo. Buffalo's now beaten them twice, 4-1, and then 8-7, a wild, crazy game, which we'll talk about later. 8-7.
And Buffalo, by the way, Buffalo has pretty much owned Montreal over the last 4 games. And I don't think Montreal beats Carolina, even with another defenseman in a 7-game series.
Carolina didn't do anything either, though. If they
but because
they
made defensively
in the summer are going to help them.
Yeah. Look, I feel very good about Montreal keeping their powder dry. Really good. I think having those 2 first-round draft picks in their pocket for next year is going to be fantastic.
Okay.
And the one for this year, they might have a great opportunity to unload this summer for a massive asset upgrade.
So here's my point too: is if you have so many assets and so many young players on the roster now, how many more can you have? And how many more places do you have on the current roster for more young talent that's not ready to win? Right? You're in a win the next 2-3 years mode. Some of those guys got to go in order to fill it in with some veterans that can actually win now.
Yeah, I think that's true. But if you're in a position where you want the ability to be competitive and a contender for a decade,
we talked about this last week. I think
you need to still have those.
A contender for the next decade without winning it is Montreal fans will revolt at some point.
Well, the Maple Leaf fans didn't revolt until.
Well, we can get into how bad the Leaf fans are, and I'm one of them, and the corporate crap that's gone on there over the years of greed and money, but I don't think so. You and I will agree.
You and I will agree to disagree on Montreal staying.
Well, we're not going to agree on this one. We can fight for that.
Yeah. So you're the winners and losers.
Playoffs like I am with the Habs out after the first or second round, then we'll have that discussion again.
I'll live with that.
Okay. So the rest of the trade deadline was shocking in that the battle. We can move to the West a little bit. We can go around the league about winners and losers of the trade deadline.
The trade
But
deadline didn't really mean that much
well, it
in
didn't
the end,
change anything because everybody was
except
chasing
to,
Colorado, and now they're
yeah,
still
well,
chasing
Colorado got
Colorado.
better. Colorado's got the most center depth in the league, and it's not particularly close.
Down the middle, McKinnon, Nelson, Kadri, Waugh, or Roy,
I mean,
whatever you
that's,
want to call him.
we'll call
What
it
other
raw.
team is Kadri the third line center?
Yeah, he's like, they are deep and dangerous. I mean,
It's crazy.
and they
They're
and by the way, don't sleep on picking up Kulak for Sam Girard. Like, we talked about that
absolutely,
trade a little bit already, but that's an upgrade. A
absolutely.
disappointing upgrade to me, because I think I talked about him last year on the pod. I like Girard. He's a
Yeah,
good, he's not the biggest guy, but he's a puck moving defenseman. Has really good wheels, good skater, but I guess he just never really put it all together. At least
right,
not to the level that a championship caliber team needs.
right.
And besides, you've got the best puck moving defenseman on the planet on your team
Absolutely.
already.
But I think the lateness of the Kadri deal, because if the rumors are true, Kadri was going to Colorado and Toronto was never going to have a chance to trade Waugh or Roy or whoever you want to call him. And ownership wouldn't approve the deal. So they turned and went and got Waugh or Roy from Toronto. And then it got
Mm-hmm.
revisited again. And they were able to pull it together really late from the sounds of it. And I think Kadri's going to do a lot more than just be um, obviously a great player. But I think since January 1, Colorado's gone into it because they were so far out in front of everybody. They went into a
Yeah,
little
they
bit of
got a little
sleep mode,
complacent. Yeah.
right? I think Kadri's going to wake them up. His type of
Mm-hmm.
play and his fire is going to wake that team up. And they just beat um, um, the Wild today. They beat Dallas on Friday,
Dallas. Yeah.
both in shootouts and both wild games. Those are going to be, again, we said it last year. Those three teams are going to beat the living snot out of each other. And last year you had Winnipeg in that instead of Minnesota. But now it's Minnesota, Dallas and Colorado. And we don't talk about it right now with the playoff structure. It's a shame that two of those three teams are going to be gone after the second round,
Yeah.
right?
And
Instead
by the
of
way,
battling to the end.
going back to the trade deadline, Minnesota picked up some grit.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, the Foligno brothers are back together.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. McCarron, Schmidt, your buddy Petrie on defense. They definitely added a lot of grit. Obviously, their big move was early in January when they picked up Quinn Hughes. Amazing move. And obviously, the Wild thought they got a lot closer, if not neck and neck with Colorado, and they probably were
yeah.
up until the trade deadline when Colorado pulled the rabbit out of their hat and pulled Kadri out of Calgary. And then right ahead of them again. So um, I just don't see anybody picking up Dallas. Tried to keep pace with bringing in Tyler Myers out of Vancouver. Big, tough defenseman, great in his own end, has some puck moving ability, good skater. So hopefully he can help. And they've still got some great talent up front, but
Yeah.
missing Sagan's
Colorado's
going
the
to hurt.
class.
But there's no question that Colorado is the class of the Pacific, of the
Even with Landeskog taking a puck to the
Central
nuts
Divisions.
and
Yeah,
and being
absolutely.
out for a little
Now,
while.
the thing that Dallas has over Colorado is goaltending because I'd put Dallas's goaltending up against Blackwood and what's his name, Edgewood or whatever his name is, the two Wood brothers,
Edgewood
um,
and Blackwood.
and Blackwood and Edgewood. Um, that's where Dallas's Achilles heel or Colorado's Achilles heel is going to be is their goaltending. Can their goaltending hold up in the playoffs?
It's
Um,
been pretty good so far this
yeah.
year.
Well, again, we
By the
said
way,
this before. Mediocre
Binnington
team.
versus Hellebuck in the gold medal
Yeah,
game. Look how that ended. So maybe
absolutely.
Ottinger has the juice to steal a
Absolutely. We'll
series.
see. We'll see. But, you know, what else? The Oilers, obviously, again, um, shockingly, but not shockingly, they didn't pick up a goaltender. Bowman was kind of direct saying, we made our bed, we're going to sit in it. Can obviously say those words, but that's basically what he came out and said.
Yep.
Adding Connor Murphy on defense hopefully solidifies their defense a little bit, gives them a defensive defenseman that can help get the puck out of their own end, sort of help stabilize their top four pairings. And then bringing in Colton Dock and Jason Dickinson. Again, adding a little grit, right? Adding a
Yeah.
little bit more grit down on their bottom six lines so they can allow um, Nugent Hopkins to play in the top six because they were dropping Nugent Hopkins to the third line center because they had no one there, right? So you bring
Yeah.
in Dickinson, you can play him there, and you can allow Nugent Hopkins to go up. So again, the problem for Oilers are going to have is in the last 12 games, they've given up 56 goals. They're giving up
I know it's a little scary.
4.8 goals a game. They're having to score 5 or 6 goals a game. They're playing the nights Sunday night tonight. Um, and it's just ugly of how they're winning, and they've got to fix their team structure, defensive structure, and hopefully with these changes and bringing Coffee back, they can make some kind of a run here. But
Yeah, nobody saw the Pacific Division leading Anaheim Ducks coming. That's
oh,
for sure.
jeez, no question. But we
And
all,
picking up that was the big shocker trade, and the one we probably
yeah,
should have led off with was John Carlson at 36 and still an elite defenseman, as far as I'm concerned, traded to the Anaheim Ducks,
yep,
and instantly solidifying what is a very talented but very inexperienced, other than Radko Gudas and Jacob Trouba, blue
it's a
line.
and
And
big defenseman because Lacombe isn't a small guy either.
yeah, Lacombe. You know what? When I was watching the Canadians Ducks game. I know we were joking that he got $8 million at the beginning of the year, and we were laughing because we'd never heard of the guy. He's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I haven't
He's
seen
pretty
much of him.
impressive. He
So
moves the puck well for a big guy, and had a couple of rushes that led to scoring chances. And I was impressed with him. Now, is he an $8 million guy? I can't really say yes or no after a 1 game sample. But and by the way, shame on me living in LA and this being really the first Ducks game I've watched all year. But
definitely shame on you.
shame on me. It's hard enough following two teams and possibly, and partly three, because I want to watch a Leaf game so I can talk to you intelligently about that. So it's hard to watch enough hockey to like throw in another team.
Oh
But
yeah, my wife hates me right now. The amount of hockey I'm watching the last
wait till the
5
wait till the
days.
playoffs start. Um, so yeah, the Ducks are an up and coming team, and
Well,
Joe
don't look
Quenneville.
now. They're now leading the Pacific
They're
Division,
leading. They're leading the Pacific Division now. The
which is important because you
Canadians.
want to play in your division. In that division, you want to play in the division as long as you can
Yeah,
before you go up and play one of the big
one
boys.
of the big three.
Yes. So,
Yeah. Well, the Canadians didn't play very well against Anaheim, and Anaheim, to their credit, made them pay for mistakes.
right.
And and then they scored a tying goal in the dying seconds to send it to overtime, and then they won in the shootout. Apparently, they never lose in a shootout. They're 8-0 in the shootout this year,
Wow.
or
I
nine
didn't
and
know
zero,
that's
or
a
whatever.
silly
Yeah,
stat.
yeah,
Look at
and
you pulling a stat out of your
yeah. Look
behind.
at that's what happens when you watch the game. And until last night, here's a real cool one for you. Until last night, Mason McTavish was 6 for 6 in shootout attempts this year. Hadn't missed one.
Really? Wow.
And then he missed it last night, and they still won. Go
Oh,
figure.
wow. Well, good for him.
Yeah,
But
but yeah, don't look now. I mean, look, the Anaheim Ducks are not going to make a ton of noise in the playoffs because
yeah.
Carlson or not, they're not going to be able to keep the puck out of their net enough.
Yeah,
But
but either of the
they're
other two
fun to
teams in that
watch.
division to stay in that division, the Knights needed a goaltender badly. They should have done whatever they could to go and get a goaltender because their 3 or 4 goaltenders, Hart, Schmidt, Hill, and Lindbaum, are all terrible. Hart's injured at the
It's time to
moment.
bring back PK Subban's little brother.
Oh, wow. Like it's just so bad. Like now they made their big move in January, bringing in Erasmus Anderson and hoping
Mhm.
that would solidify their defense because they've obviously, lost the big defenseman this year.
Pietrangelo.
But
They lost
Pietrangelo,
Pietrangelo.
thank you. And they're terrible on their own end. And they're terrible defensively as well. And without goaltending, they've got no hope. And thankfully, and I'll be the one cheering this on the most, and my buddy Sean will know I'm talking to him at this one. He'll be sitting right there beside me, along with Marner sitting with his old ex-Leafs golfing after the first round of the playoffs.
Maybe they'll all be watching Montreal.
They all might be watching Montreal until they're gone in the second for not going getting a goaltender. But before we leave the West for a second, the team, forget about winning and losing trade deadline. The big winners, if they can turn it into something, in my impression, is the Calgary Flames.
Yeah,
They
they've got
have
draft picks coming out of their ears.
four first rounders over the next 2 years. They've got something like 8 or 9 picks in the top two rounds of the draft over the next 2 years, and they got 5 of the top 45 picks in this year's draft. If they can
Yeah,
turn
but it's
this
all
into
what
some
you do
young
with them.
talent or trade some of it for some talent, they could turn this thing around pretty quickly. And they're looking towards 28, where they're going to have a new building, to being a competitive team. So
Yeah, they're
Conroy's
not
done
going to
a
be a
good job
competitive
of
team in
turning what he
28.
had. What's that?
They're not going to be competitive in 28.
Oh, but
They'll
that's
be
they.
competitive in 20. Look, the Canadians are ahead of schedule, and it's
You
already
want
been
them at
4
least
years.
watchable when they're in their new rink, and you want them
Yeah,
selling
a
tickets and
hundred. You want
seats.
them. You
And
want them to be young and exciting, but you got to spend those draft picks wisely.
yes, well,
And you look
Conroy's
at
got
like
he's
you,
going to have a year to try and figure this out.
but it's all that's all about scouting and development
Yep,
staff, right? Because
absolutely.
look what the Rangers did with all of their first round picks since they started their rebuild.
Well, we've
The
talked
only
her
one
to her
still with
blue
the
in the face about the Rangers'
but the
dysfunction.
only one they still have is Lafreniere, and he's
He
not
might be not
busting
there
down
at
the
the end of
doors of the
this
league.
summer
Yeah,
either. He might not be there.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
but as we go back to I want to talk about Buffalo for a second and go back to the East a little bit.
Worst to first.
Worst to
And
first story.
and you watch the game, so you tell everybody.
Oh
And
my
we're
God.
running a little long today, but we have to talk
Oh
about the
my
game
God.
today because
I haven't seen a wild, crazy game like that. It started from the beginning that it was clear that these two teams don't like each other. If you had turned off the TV and just listened, you would have thought you were listening to or watching Tampa Bay versus Florida. It was that ugly that quickly. There was something like 5 or 6 multiplayer fights in the first period, 2 more at the beginning of the second. In all told, there was about 100 minutes of penalties and 15 goals. At one point, it was 4-1 Buffalo. Somehow in the second period, Tampa Bay came back and then led by 2 during the third period. And Buffalo came back to score 3 goals in the third period to win by a goal. It was just a wild, physical, tough battle. If these two teams play for the Eastern Atlantic Division champion, again, another reason why you want to see this in the final of the Eastern Final. It'll be a fun 7-game series with these two going at it because it was a physical battle. It was clearly, and forget about the 15 goals for a second. The defense was terrible and goaltending wasn't great, but the physicality of this game was playoff physicality.
yeah,
It was scrum after every whistle, every puck stop, guys going in after the goaltender. It was just crazy. Fights
and
galore.
Buffalo's got 2 defensive defensemen coming. So
Yeah, and neither of Stanley or Shen were in the lineup. The only
excuse me.
pickup of Buffalo, no problem. The only pickup of Buffalo that was in the lineup tonight was Carrick. So
Yeah,
they're going to look a lot better, and they've beaten Tampa Bay twice now. They beat them 4-0 earlier in the week, and they beat them 8-7 tonight. And they're going to play again in April, and that's going to be a bloodbath, and it's going to be a
yeah,
revenge night, especially if there's first place in the East up for grabs.
yeah,
But
yeah.
how fun is it going to be to watch this over the next couple weeks? Even if I
It's
don't
gonna
have my
be.
Leafs to watch, I'm gonna have to
You
find a
got a
different
lot
hat.
of
I thought you were gonna send me a
you.
Montreal Canadiens hat, so I don't have to. I can burn this
I
Leafs
know.
hat.
I thought maybe that's why you were wearing the Maple Leafs hat to
I,
remind
I,
me. All right,
I was wearing it because it's the last time you're probably going to see it for a little while.
Okay.
Because I can't wear this in public anymore. People just
Okay.
laugh at me, rightfully so.
Rightfully so.
Um,
Well,
so
before we wrap this up, I have to talk a little bit because I was at the Canadians Kings game yesterday with my daughter, who
you're
is
gonna have to bring your
a
daughter back on so we can give her the gears the way she gave us the gears a few
right.
months ago.
Believe me, she wanted to, but she wasn't coming on to let us give her the gears. So I said no. But she was wearing her Kings jersey and she cheered on her team. And she thought she had it until 5 minutes left when Trevor Moore took the dumbest slashing penalty ever. Habs score on the power play. 49 seconds later, Suzuki, who else, puts them in front. And this time they actually played good 5-on-6 defense, even though they gave up a couple of open point shots and managed to salt the game away. But
so how did that go between the two of you during the game? Because my
oh my
daughter,
God, she was just,
or
we were
fortunately or
letting each other
unfortunately, are
have
Leaf
it.
fans, so we're rooting for the same team.
We were letting
Your
each other
daughter,
have it.
you
Letting
should
each
record
other
that. I
have
want to
it.
come watch a game with the two of you. That'd be fun.
Yeah, it'd be fun. And so we, but sitting behind, first of all,
You had great seats. I saw the picture.
We had great seats. We were ninth row behind the penalty box, and the 1/3 of the lower bowl was red.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
Canadian teams and the Canadians and Leaf fans, they travel.
At one point, I swear to you, at one point in the third period, when the Canadians were pushing for the winning, the tying goal, the Ole 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 song was going in full force.
Kidding. In LA.
In LA. It was really impressive.
Wild.
And the Kings fans tried to drown it out with "Go Kings Go," but it didn't happen.
No one
I think they sensed something bad was going to happen. But I want to finish the story by saying, shout out to my new friend Mark, who is from Montreal, sitting behind me with his son, who he managed to turn into a Canadiens fan, even though he never really grew up in Montreal. And my daughter, being of the four of us, the only Kings fan, and chiding this young man for having been, quote, indoctrinated so into the cult of the Canadiens. So I'm so glad we came back and won that game, because my daughter needed a little bit of humility.
Humble pie. Does this mean we have a new listener or viewer now that we're on video here? Do we have a new Aiming 5
I forgot. I
podcast
have to confess, as the marketing genius that I am, I forgot to mention that.
Come on. Come on. Okay, so you've got a task for the next week. We normally talk at the end. We won't go on it, but we're all looking forward to seeing how these trades play out and the players join their teams and seeing how it works out. But you've got to go and get us a new listener. We've now got 3
That'll be my job.
Listeners. We got 3 German. We got to add another German listener, which is great. So hello out there to our new German listener. And we failed this week to talk about the Evgeny Malkin 5-game suspension. So we'll talk about that next week when we see each other again on the Aiming 5-Hole podcast. You have a great week, Ryan, and I'll see you next week right here.
Same to you, my man.
See you later, man. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Yep.